So what happened then was that the government put in a media ban, meaning nobody could know what was happening in the country. Those of us in the country had no idea what was happening around us, and those who were concerned outside the country also had no idea what was happening in the country. Therefore, a group of 4 techies and bloggers came together to develop this simple platform where Kenyan citizens could report using SMS, a shortcode on SMS, and report on what was happening around them. And so this platform aggregated around 40,000 reports from Kenyans, and were able to triage them and map them. Therefore, this became the one-stop location for both citizens in Kenya to know what was happening and those outside to understand the situation in Kenya. And so these 4 founders of Ushahidi then called this organization Ushahidi, which means testimony in Swahili, because we're able to provide Kenyans with a way of raising their voices concerning what was happening around the post-election violence. And so for us, elections is very dear to heart because this is the reason why we were born. And as you've rightfully said, this is the super year of elections. Over half the globe is going to vote. And therefore, it is imperative for us to be able to support organizations who are conducting election monitoring initiatives across the globe and specific to this conversation in Africa to enable citizens to raise their voices. The challenges that we are seeing is a reduction in the civic space. We have a lot of political repression. You've spoken about Senegal, whereby they was a mobile internet shutdown when the government postponed the election just before the citizens were planning a protest march against the postponement of elections. Up to today, 3 years later, Facebook is still banned in Uganda. So we are seeing the civic space is shrinking in some countries. Secondly, we are seeing the rise of AI and AI inclusion. And thirdly, we are seeing a lot of voter apathy. For example, in Nigeria, the rate of voters voting has been declining over the years. So these are some of the challenges that we are currently seeing, and we are hoping that through collaboration with organizations that are working with citizens on the ground using technology, we can be able to reverse these issues and then promote democracy and enhance civic engagement.
Thank you very much, Rhoda. That's very interesting. And I like the fact that you mentioned the rise in AI and innovations and how, it has its good as a positive effect. And we will get back. Why is election important for Africa, connected development? And why are we what has the team learned over time, and how is technology affecting the work in the way you go about it?
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I'm just surprised that Ushahidi is here, Joshua is here. I don't know what I'm doing here, because really all the work we've been doing is partnering with these 2 giants to really put out all the information out there. And one of the things we've been trying to do is understanding the challenges that we Africans have been going through. And like she rightly said, one of the things is, in Africa, not just in Nigeria, across Africa, a lot of young people or every other person across the continent has issues of trust and issues of belief in our democratic system, that is in our election system. And one of the things we try to look at is how can we bridge that gap? And that's why we identify that a partnership is key. And then if partnership is key, how can we put that information out there for people to be able to say, this is what we do? And if you look at what we did in Nigeria in partnership with Dataphyte and Ushahidi, was basically to say, go and observe election in your own polling unit while you're casting your vote, so that we don't take you out of where you're voting to say you're going somewhere somewhere to cast your vote, because we want you to believe in the system and also trust the system, because you're the one feeding the system with some level of information, right? And that's why. So one of the key things we have for us is to build partnership and to build trust, belief within the system. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And if you look at what democracy is all about, it's all about demand and supply, question and answers. So understanding that we cannot be sending representatives that we don't trust. And when the system that takes them there is not trustworthy, obviously we cannot get that kind of thing. And if you look at what happened during one of the elections in Nigeria, the person that won the election, that's the presidential candidate that won the election, said the system that brought me has an issue, and you guys will join me to address this issue. I don't know if that issue has been addressed. I doubt if the issue has been addressed, because I will tell you that there are a lot of issues to that. But for us, the challenges we identify are just three: that trust and belief, then privacy concern, bias, and lack of fairness, and then digital right in a nutshell. And that's why we're having this conversation, so that we can make things work, run a race together, and win the race together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mukhtar. Joshua, I will come to you now. Why is Dataphyte, what are the numbers? Tell us what the numbers are saying and why this conversation is important. I keep hearing this collaboration, which is a very strong one. I know that these are three teams that have worked together, and from monitoring your elections with this team, what would you say are the numbers, and why are we having this conversation now? Why is it important for Dataphyte at the moment to be talking about technology and how it's affecting our elections at the moment?
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you, Rhoda and Mukhtar, for honoring the webinar. I guess since you want me to stay with the numbers, I'll probably just also tie everything around that for the importance or the relevance of the Africa elections for us at Dataphyte. As you would know, and I guess people in the audience we know, Dataphyte takes like three approaches to how we go about our socioeconomic and political development across the continent, starting with Nigeria. The first is with access to data. The other is policy insight, and accountability reporting. And then the third is training and technology resourcing. So we kind of say we provide the data here to development, as it were. And those three things are what we believe we can bring, wrapped around collaboration with, platforms like Ushahidi, like Connected Development, and the rest that we've worked with in the past. And it will be of interest to Rhoda to know that, in my different lives, I've really had to work with Ushahidi as a tool, not only for election monitoring, but also for security, access to health, press freedom, and it tells first, that the robustness of that platform. But more importantly, for us at Dataphyte is to drive an election conversation, either from the place of campaign, manifesto, monitoring, collection, or even follow-up, is a place of access to data, right? Today we have over, like you asked me, we have over almost 500 million, people that a population of 24 countries with over 500 million, almost 500 million people, that their lives and livelihood will be determined, post the elections. Out of that, over 200 million have our voting age. And what level of information are we able to provide for these 217 million people who will be going to the polls, or who have the capacity to go to the poll, is one thing that is dear to our heart. What are we able to say to them? What information do they need to know about the candidates? What information are they able to know about? How are we able to provide, either with dialogue or other forms of conversation, how are we able to provide, the issues, that would help them in making the right decision. Mukhtar said something when he started, how Nigeria's elected president seemed to be of questionable, or there's a challenge of trust in the process that brought him to power, or that brought him to government, sorry, and all of that. And those are the things that are important to us. How are you able to create a legitimacy out of the electoral process based on the information that is available to citizens, based on access instruments or tools that civil society, media, government institutions like the electoral commissions, how are you able to reinforce all of their resources together to support the voters to make the right decisions, or to select or elect, if you like, their candidate? And on the other end of it for us is, what technology can we bring to bear so that human agencies, right, like what you will get connected development do, and what powers the crowdsourcing, the open source platform of Ushahidi, which is crowdsourcing, information, insight, data, how we're able to bring that technology to bear, such as we did during the 2023 election in Nigeria. We worked across those three. First, providing access to data. Second is providing insight. And then the third is crowdsourcing citizens to tell us what was happening on the ground, in real time. And we think that that level of support, that level of insight, will help, every decision maker in the next election. Of course, you can get to other important issues, or which are very tangential, but beyond being tangential are also very critical. You're talking about the issues of data and digital rights. I mean, just some days back, you heard that the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, of Nigeria, is ID details is everywhere. You can buy it with just 100 naira, right? And what happens to all the voters' data? That's also an important conversation. So I think for us is, how do you bring data to bear as you talk about as you bring about all of these conversations that will lead to electoral integrity, citizen participation, voters' right, but as much as possible, also issues of inclusion. I've spoken to you about 217 million people of voters' age. How many of them are disabled? How many of them are women? How many of them are, what does this number also include the people in diaspora? How do you bring all of this together? I think those are the things that are dear to our own heart, identified, and I believe is also very dear. We've not even gone to the place of security, post snatching and all the rest. So, I mean, array, or if you like, myriad of issues that are there that we think 24 elections, 270 million voters, 500 million population. It's huge that we should start the conversation as early as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joshua. Very interesting capture. And then in the conversation, you mentioned the women component of how all of this is playing out. Women youth participation in the elections across Africa. And call me biased, but I'm going to come back to Rhoda and say, let's talk about women, and in this equation, how I know Ushahidi has done a lot of work partnering with other people, and you've monitored elections so much so that you must have so much information about women participation. And so from your work at Ushahidi and partnership with stakeholders, what have you observed about women participation in elections, whether as voters or whether as candidates? What's it been like in terms of monitoring and observing how that element is playing out? I will bring the same question to you, Mukhtar and Joshua, and we'll be talking from another component. But yes, this is women participation in the election. Rhoda, what's your take on this?
Thank you, Rosemary. I would say when you're speaking about the voters, the challenge that we are seeing with women is that, and which is a challenge generally when it comes to technology, is that, there are some missing voices there. We aim to reach disenfranchised communities, and women being part of disenfranchised communities. A lot of times the partners that we are working together with to reach the most remote areas, you would find that people that have access, for example, to telephones are the male figureheads of the home. So you'd find that women are often left out of the opportunity to raise their voices in terms of sharing what is happening around elections. So how we counter that is that we engage with partners that are specifically working in the space of women or are working towards women's rights and women's issues to ensure that even as we are reaching ensuring that people are able to share their sentiments and opinions about elections, that these organizations are specifically targeting the women that they work with at the grassroots level to enable them to know that there is a platform where they can be able to share their issues and be able to share their sentiments, and that their voices actually matter in terms of civic engagement, in terms of how their input is going to shape the governance space. On the flip side, when we look at women who are vying for political seats, a third issue that we are seeing in addition to the missing voices is that there is a corruption of the data ecosystem. There is misinformation, disinformation, meaning that a lot of times we are seeing that the women are attacked for being women and not because of the policies that they're speaking towards or what they are hoping to achieve once elected. So there's a lot of misinformation that is spread against the women, targeted hate speech and targeted vitriol against them just because they're women. And you cannot see the same type of mis and disinformation being done towards men. For example, having images or videos of these women being leaked, which is absolutely irrelevant to what they are wanting to achieve as political leaders. So these are the challenges that we are seeing concerning women leaders who are wanting to step up to be elected and to be seen as representatives.
Thank you very much. You mentioned women at the grassroots, and I'm going to bring that to Mukhtar. I was reading an article and I saw it said women make half of every country's population and should rightly have equal participation in decision-making system. The report also said, by empowering women in participating fully in politics, we stand to cultivate societies that are more equitable as well as sustainable. I know that Code for Africa, Follow the Money as it were, is working really at grassroots level. So the question is, what are you doing in this regard as how are you creating that awareness for women participation at the grassroots level? And what have you observed in terms of the turnout, the outcome, or as it were, how are women participating, and how are you encouraging and creating that awareness for more participation from the women?
Yeah. So first of all, right, before I go in depth there, I want us to understand one thing around women participation when it comes to Nigerian context. Rhoda will bear me witness. I was in Kenya during the last election to observe election, and I was trying. We tried as much as possible to compare this thing, but Joshua is also here. He will bear me witness. One of the reasons why we have Ministry of Women Affairs was to breach a lot of things. But if you ask me today, I will tell you, I don't know why we even have Ministry of Women Affairs when there are men that work within the Ministry of Women Affairs. And if you analyze the budget of Ministry of Women Affairs from now, maybe back 10 years back or 15 years back, you could bear me witness that most of the large chunk of the money that goes to Ministry of Women Affairs for skill acquisition, and then trainings and so on and so. So largely, if you look at one of the point is, look at what we have as Ministry of Women Affairs. Sadly, I will tell you, I'm from Adamawa State in Nigeria, northeastern part of the country. We wake up one day and we had about a governor that nominated or brought a commissioner of women affairs that's a guy, right? So what are you telling me? There are no competent women that are so good enough for them to do that. So from the initial stage, the representation has to do with, that socio-economical point, that economical barrier, that political barrier, that media representation of women. You can only see media bringing women when there are issues that has to do with women. You get, when there are issues that has to do. When last did you see a woman and then you see her title, public analyst? I don't know. These are small things that has to do with issues of representation. And Rhoda mentioned something around their pictures, psychological issues. So over time, if you look at, we don't have a political ideology in Nigeria. Everybody comes with his own ideology and people run and follow. Someone that is in party A will be in party B tomorrow because he lost a primary election ticket. And do you know what baffles me the most? A lot of women don't support women candidates. I'll give you an instance. The last election we had in Nigeria, there are some number of women that contest for this particular election. The large chunk of the number of people that do go stay there and vote are women. Why don't you support women? So if we come back to this, a lot of time, look at our political primaries, they would always tell you, women have free ticket. You don't have to buy. But you will end up seeing, during the primaries, you end up seeing one vote. She's the only person that votes for herself. What really happened? So poverty has contributed to that point of stopping women from that. And another thing is that cultural norms that some people have that, oh, okay, women don't belong here, right? And then issues of religion. So one of the things we've been doing is to make the people in these communities understand that women can also represent, women can also put in their quota. But I will tell you, another challenge that I have noticed, look at the election, the governance scandals that we've had, the corruption scandals that we've had in Nigeria, right? And pinpoint the number of women that are part of the scandals. From Dizani, Alison Madoke to the former minister of humanitarian, that's Sadia, to the present one we have, that has also made people now think around, see, all of us are the same. So the reality is, within those communities, there have been culture, there have been lack of trust, there have been lack of media representation of women, there have been that issue of socio-economical issues, of economical issues of, and even institutional and legal representation of women. All of this contribute to that. What are the things we're doing? We're now trying to see how we can, the whole world is speaking about rebuilding trust, right? Rebuilding trust to people so that people will understand that, hey, representation is not about gender. Good governance or promoting good governance is not about gender. It's not about this guy is a man or this guy is a woman. Everybody has that equal representation. And if he has the mindset of development, definitely he or she will develop. So, and that's one of the things we're doing. And that's why one of our projects now is called Project Trust. And one of the things we want to do is to see how we can engage each and everybody to come in together and see how we can, build trust among people so that people will be able to believe, trust women, as well as understand and perceive and comprehend how, women can represent them, and then they can put and send women for them. But what I will say lastly is really, Rosemary, Rhoda, and everybody, we need to talk to women to begin to support women. Women need to support women because women don't support women. That's my view. Thank you.
Let me ask, just a follow-up question. What do you think is the challenge with women not supporting women? Why do you think that is playing out in Nigeria, across Africa? Have you identified any reason why that is the case?
So if I'm speaking from my mindset. I tell you, a lot of time I have female friends, and they'll tell you that, oh, I don't mingle with women. I largely do want to just have my friends to be guys because I don't want problem, you know. So till today, I don't know, Joshua, has done a lot of things. And Femi D, Femi can tell us something around why women don't support women. But really, I can't tell, and I see no reason why women should support women. And I would really love to hear from that. Rosemary, you can also tell us something.
Thank you very much. I will throw that question to Joshua, but this time from a different angle. Joshua, what are the numbers? How time? I'm sure Dataphyte has monitored the numbers, voting, whether as voters or as candidates campaigning for different positions. What have we seen over time, across Africa? How and what's the data trend, in recent and in past and in recent elections? What has changed, and what should we be doing better as a people in Africa to change any number if that's the case?
Okay, so I don't even know whether to reel out the numbers or to respond to Mukhtar's conversation, comment.
You can do both. Tell us the numbers first, and then maybe touch a little bit on what.
And that's why the reason why I said I don't know whether to speak to the number is, also how you lose the value of the conversation in just reeling out numbers without putting context to it. And I don't know how much of the time that I have to do that. But I mean, I think the biggest data that is out there, or the most instructive data that is out there, is that only 6 countries out of all the African countries, or I think globally even, have 50% or more women in parliament, in either a single or bicameral or lower houses. Rwanda leads in Africa, and I think maybe the only one that is African among them with over 61%. The other issue is also that you have more women in local government, at the local government level, being represented. The question to ask is how much of local governance or capacity to do local governance do these women have, and why is there a glass ceiling that doesn't take them below the local governance structure that brings them to state level structure, or the subnational or national level structure, or even global structure? And Mukhtar started to allude to one of the reasons why this happens. There's cultural. There's also the uninformed or disinformed knowledge about women in leadership. When women say to you that they don't trust another woman, how much of interrogation do we do on that conversation, right? Even as simple as, do you trust your mom, can be the way to start to debunk, right? If you trust your mother, if you trust your sister, why can't you trust another? But what I'm trying to say is it puts the job of literacy, it puts the job of, strategic dialogue, that helps to correct, or that helps to put out that positive narrative. You have almost all the women that have been in, national development or national, offices globally, you would have seen that they've been exemplary. So how much of media literacy or media, hype, if you like, for these women, using them as examples, the former leader in Germany, you talk of the likes of Okonjo-Iweala, you talk of good and great people rather than examples, 1 or 2 examples that are wrong. I'll quickly jump in something here. We did an analysis, a consultancy analysis for an organization in Nigeria, and what we're looking at is how Nigeria Twitter responds to corruption by female leaders and corruption by male leaders. And it was filled with a lot of, hate speech, a lot of, discrimination, when it comes to women, right? More than you will see when it is men, right? We're able to count, and we can also say it's a proportion of how many women are even in government enough to talk about this. But I guess to take the conversation back to the African elections, 24 elections are happening across Africa. If you take Nigeria and other countries that will be running, subnational, or if you like, runoff elections, you probably will have about 30 countries that are, okay, someone is saying they can't hear me, that are going to poll in 2024. So the conversation should be, how can we use this, disturbing data to spur the right conversations? How can we use it to harm, civil society organizations, development partners, even political party officials, to bring women to, to support women to lead, to support women to contest, to ensure that the policies that exist out there, support these women. I mean, very close to that is the issue of disability. How many disabled people are, given opportunity? Are we even using, has that come up as part of the policy, conversations that we're having? So I guess it's to see this from, we can't continue to see women as minority if the population of Africa has them almost close to 50%, right? And bringing that out, I think, is what the media has to do. We should stop this whole profiling of only male, candidates, right? We should give, if there is a 50-50, you want to increase what you give to women. You want more voice as much as possible. You want their campaigns to, you want to even remove the disinformation that exists about women in leadership, right? You want to do a lot of solution-centric, development-focused reporting or highlight of women. All of that has to be done. And I also think from a point of media monitoring, maybe this is how you start to set the agenda, to begin to also incite the media to say, this is how bad that you've reported or how bad or how you have underreported women candidates or female candidates in election. I think those are, what I can call teasers, or how to start the conversation for us across Africa, and how we bring in some of the people in the room. How do we even start to take this as an important thing? What will connected development do as an Africa wide grassroots mobilization organization to ensure that part of the conversation that will happen will be conversation about women? How will it be that Ushahidi, for instance, or Dataphyte, for instance, is saying every women-led civic organization that will be working on election will either give you, we will give you some level of access or promotion, at that level? Or how is it that we are even going to direct our data monitoring, data collection, and insight work to just look at those issues of minorities, rather than, or not rather, in support, as a complementary, or consolidating what we already use our platform and organizations for? I'll stop there so that others can talk.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. I was just reading a message from the chat box, which was kind of related to what you were saying. It says, in 1995, the Commission for Women was upgraded to a full-flagged Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, which meant that Nigeria has achieved one of the critical areas of concern for Beijing platform for the action. It might be good to have some type of data-driven analytics, of this impact of the ministry on the concerns of women. Joshua, this is you. What do you want to say something about this, especially as it related to data and the analysis?
I guess I started to set the agenda for Dataphyte and I think for Ushahidi and connected development, to say disaggregated data that helps to monitor promises and policies are important things we need to take on, right? I remember that when we launched in 2020, it was quite weird that the first data advocacy brochure that we developed was on gender, because we told ourselves every other issue is important, but we've had enough of it already. Let's start with what was important. And that was why we brought out the Gender in Nigeria, brochure in 2020. That was an agenda. I imagine that it is due for the second edition of that. And I'm putting that forward to Dataphyte. And I'm saying, let's not do this only for Nigeria. Let's take this across Africa. Let's collaborate with other, women empowerment, women leadership organizations that are out there, and provide the Africa-wide, analysis or review of what is happening, here and there. I think Abdrazak is asking me what of Dataphyte. I'm talking of Dataphyte, actually, that we started, this idea of bringing data to drive issues of gender equality, gender equity, in the country. Even our media monitoring, if you read our 2023 media monitoring report, you will see how we went for the media and how they underreported issues of women disability and issue-based reporting, as it were. So you would see that there is that intentionality, there's that deliberateness to reporting issues of women, but I think we can do better. First, with scale beyond our own immediate countries of Nigeria, Kenya, to make it we have 24 countries. How can we partner with grassroots or local organizations in those countries to say, how would Dataphyte bring visualization, data analysis, and all of this to bear to support these 24 countries? How will Ushahidi, be more deliberate? And I mean, there are other key guys in the room that I know are working around. In some of the names I don't want to call them out, but I think that where you're leading us to, and I don't know whether it's intentional, Rosemary, is to say the issues of women, need to be frontal as we talk about Africa elections in 2024.
Yeah, you're correct, and that's why I started this questioning by saying, "Call me biased," but yes, there is a lot of issues around women participation, and rightly, like Rhoda said, we can hear and we can see that is a missing voice in all of this equation, and it needs to come to the front burner when we are having this conversation. And thank you for the what you mentioned. You mentioned how we should be given more opportunities for these conversations to happen, how we should give as against, our male counterpart, how they should have more opportunities, especially for positions and stuff, and have their voices heard, allow them to, and allow other women to support them as well in all of this equation. If we can love our mothers, we as women, should be able to support ourselves. And so that equation that question of women not supporting women shouldn't be playing out too much in our conversations, especially around elections for women. I'm going to come back to Rhoda, where part of what we're talking about is technology and how this has changed, has evolved over time. I'm going to ask, Ushahidi has been around since 2008 as a tool to monitor and map post-election violence in Kenya, and I believe in other countries, African countries as well. Do you want to share with us how Ushahidi technology has evolved over the years, how working with stakeholders and partners have made a significant impact on election monitoring? Rhoda, how have you evolved over time, and what new technologies are you improving on, or has the partners that you're working with, what have you been documenting in terms of impact and how this technology is evolving over time?
Thank you, Rosemary. So when you're using the Ushahidi platform to conduct election monitoring, you are basically gathering citizen feedback, and all this feedback it's all abstract. You have to make sense of it. You have to, for example, let me use the Kenyan elections, for example, we have different languages. So people are submitting information in different languages from different parts of the country, meaning this information has to be translated to, for example, English to enable more consumption globally. It has to be geolocated for us to conduct analysis on a geospatial point of view. There's information that requires quick escalation in terms of what, for example, if somebody has reported that there's violence that has broken out at a particular polling station. So there's a lot of aspects that needs to be done when citizens are sharing their report. So previously, it has been a pretty manual process whereby we require a team of digital volunteers from around the world, congregated or aggregated in various groups, a team that is translating the reports that are coming in, a team that is geolocating the reports, a team that is verifying the reports, which is collaborating with, for example, if it was in Nigeria, our colleagues from code, who have monitors on the ground to ensure that the information that we are receiving is truthful and therefore can be published. So coordinating this team is quite a massive undertaking, and therefore we are currently in the process of incorporating AI into the back end of our tool, specifically for 3 aspects. One is it's called the AI for form assignment. So once the reports have come in, then we want to use AI to quickly categorize and assign reports based on the content, based on the urgency, to ensure that reports are quickly acted upon, so that we don't have, say, 90 people having to look through the reports manually, and then we miss out on a critical report that possibly needs to be escalated. A second use of AI is on geolocation. Currently, we have to read what the citizen is saying, where they're at, and then a member of the digital team then manually puts that report on the back end for it to then be mapped on the front end of the initiative. However, right now we are using AI for geolocation to refine and extract the data automatically from the sources that citizens are reporting with, and including the metadata, which is embedded in media, for example, photos and videos, to automatically generate the locations of the reports. And thirdly, we want to work on AI for translation, which is we're starting with Swahili since we are biased. We're in Kenya, so we want to use Ushahidi, Swahili as our test, to automatically translate Swahili reports into English, so that then once we see that this model works, then we are able to pick up on other languages. There are over 7,000 languages in the world. So if we're able to refine this, then we are able to propagate this across the globe. And as you know, AI models currently mostly just do not incorporate African cultures, African languages, African context. So this would really be groundbreaking for us to use AI from an African context and be able then to propagate it to the rest of the continent. In terms of partnerships, I would say that as Mukhtar had spoken about, it is critical for us to have very specific partners who would be able to speak to different aspects in the electoral cycle. In the Kenyan elections, for us to promote inclusion, we worked with the National Council of Persons with Disabilities. This is I would say the national body that is collaborating with persons with disabilities across the country. Therefore, we were able to disseminate our messaging numbers through the network, and therefore persons with disabilities were able to be included into the electoral process, their voices heard, and they were able to report, whereby if there was a problem with accessibility, then their problems were then taken back to the National Council of Persons with Disability, who then coordinated with the governing electoral body to ensure that matters, for example, of accessibility were sorted. A second group, for marginalized groups such as persons with disabilities and women, it is critical to ensure that we are engaging with particular organizations in these spaces to ensure that there is inclusion of everybody in the country. A second group of organizations I'd like to mention are, for example, in the Kenyan election, we worked with the Communications Authority of Kenya, which is the governing body. We were able to share with them reports of misinformation and disinformation, such that they were the ones who then use this data to now issue out what is the truth about the reports that we were receiving, and then feed that back into the platform and publish it for consumption for citizens. So it is critical to look at what are the outputs that you want in terms of partnerships, what are the outputs that you want to achieve for your electoral monitoring process, and then see who are the critical partners that you need to work with, and then engage them to ensure that as citizens are sharing their reports and their perceptions, then We have partners who are able to take up that data, use it for decision making, and then citizens then get back that data in a feedback loop, because we don't want to also be seen as just getting data from citizens, but also providing them with how what they have reported is actually being used to effect change, so that they can, it's in a way, as Mukhtar also said, it's building trust and enabling the citizen to see that my voice counts. It has been used to effect change somewhere. Therefore, I need to, be more active either in voting or any other civic engagement opportunity.
Thank you very much. Just at this point, let me remind our participants that please feel free to drop questions. I've seen a question, but it's still related to the conversation we were having about women and a gender-sensitive component of the election. I will come to Mukhtar and ask, following what Rhoda has said about the collaboration and how they are providing data for partners and stakeholders to work with. How has this process, working with Ushahidi, how has this process of getting data, creating data, monitoring, the democratic especially in the countries where you have worked at, how has this collaboration and exchange of data and technology, how has this helped to strengthen the democratic process across Africa? Mukhtar, to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. While earlier I mentioned one of the things why we venture into this conversation, because we have been at the forefront of tracking government spendings, looking at what government are doing. But we're now looking at, we look at what are the three barriers. Like I mentioned earlier, the privacy issues, the digital divide, as well as bias and lack of fairness and what have you, right? So one of the things we tried to do while entering into this partnership was to now look at how can we get these people on board to be able to, participate in this particular democracy that we're talking about, because we understood that democracy is what we need, right? But we have our own unique form of democracy. While we have someone that has been contesting for election for maybe 22 times, right? We have just close here, Cameroon. We have other people. So we have our own dynamics of democracy. So for us, one of the things is we want to get more people involved. And if you look at what we have been doing, is to identify different people with different things to come together. So I'll give you an instance. We try to identify how can we get this data, verified data. So we use our follow the money model that are using people on the ground, right? And for us to bridge that gap, what we say is, can you stand where you cast your vote and send us information that has to do with your own polling unit? Don't go anywhere. Just tell us what is happening in your own polling unit. Now, that is the first set. The second set is we need to verify these particular things that we're doing. And that's why we said, who are the people that have the knowledge of this verification and what have you? So we said Dataphyte and other organizations. So come on board, let's do that. Now, how can we get this information out there for the people to be able to know that our major concern is how can we inform the people, right? Lack of information is what led us to this particular thing. So we now said Ushahidi. Now, when we come with Ushahidi, in Kenya during the last election, there was Uchaguzi. In Nigeria, we said there was Uzabi, right? Now, what are we doing? We are now getting to bridge that gap of language and what have you, so that we can get this information. So one of the things we are trying to do, we try to say, oh, for people in government or for the election umpires and what have you, we are not after you with the result or anything. All the conversation that we're having is we are after the processes that leads to the election, that leads to the result. So we're just looking at the process, yeah, where police involved in the election, were military involved, were this, were that, were that. So that's what we are concerned about. So we understood the issue and we tried to push ahead with the issue. Now, what are we looking at? How is this particular thing helping democracy? We are now putting the information out there for people to know that, see, election can be trusted, right? The process is the problem. And if our votes don't count, why will politicians use their hard-earned money, let me not say hard-earned, their money to buy votes? Right? Why will they want to rig the election to get this? And one of the things we intend to do is there are a lot of people that they are not participating in elections. So a lot of times you hear our election umpire coming out to say, oh, okay, everybody, the election is inclusive and everybody is participating. Someone that is that cannot hear very well, or someone that cannot see very well, or someone that is aged, right? How can we get those people to be able to participate without any discrimination or without any challenges and what have you? And that's why we are we're taking it bit by bit. Now, at the bit we are on is a process. At the bit we are on is the bit of having people to trust the system. The largest number of people that cast their vote in Africa are young people. And almost half of the young people does not trust the system, the electionary system. So it's a problem. So we have to pass that bit of, people trusting the system for us to be able to get to a point of how can we have that inclusive and have that point of a thing. And that's why technology is the way to go, right? Is the way to go for us to achieve that. But I will tell you, it's not something that maybe for us, we will benefit from, because it's a process. It's not miracle. From here, Joshua can always do miracle, but this process is a process, so it will always take that point over time. But I tell you, we are going somewhere. We are going somewhere.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mukhtar. You made some very important points, especially the kind of the data that the data that is collected post-election and how we need to trust the system. I'm going to bring that question to Joshua now, but before I come to Joshua, unfortunately, we can't take voice calls. So if you do have a question, please drop it in the chat box and we will read it out. We're not able to give the mic to anyone to speak on that. Joshua, one question, and relating to what Mukhtar said, my question is, election, of course, surfaces critical data that are very important for post-election decisions. How can election data better inform or drive policy and improve development outcome? How should we be using this post-election data to drive better reform in the election system? Knowing that you've worked with data over time, should be able to support, help us understand how this is driving that conversation.
I think the first I'll talk about will be a fantastic work that is being done at the moment by the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism, which is a collaboration of investigative journalism across Africa. And what they're doing is taking the post-election data of Nigeria's 2023 election, high-ref data, to show how the election was rigged, and how the gerrymandering that happened to allegedly favor the current, president winning the elections. And that's one of the good ways you can, use election data, either for post-election, accountability, or even election, real-time accountability of the election, right? The other is also the example that I'd given before, how you can use it to also advocate, or if you like, also demand accountability from stakeholders, right? The work that we did with media monitoring of how the media reported the elections was another, is another example of how you can use election data to, advocate or to incite, key stakeholders to do better. The same thing will go for, even policy making, legislation. How do you better make legislation based on, the type of results or the type of information about your youth, women, disabled people, their numbers and how that number is important to voting. But another important data that is becoming very, very useful, in driving better decisions for election is, the geospatial data, something that Rhoda started to talk about. How do you use information about location, to better, think of, polling unit administration, also, how do you, resource even and other forms of resource? How do you use your spatial data to drive that? Something that INEC tried to do during the 2023 election, where you saw that on the day of election, polling units for people started changing. And the reason they gave, some called it excuse, is that they saw that they didn't want some polling units to be, too crowded, and so they moved people to the different places. That would have been very effective if that decision had been made before the day of election. But it speaks to how geospatial data or location data can, improve better decision making. Another important reason why geospatial data becomes important, and one of the fascinating thing about both Ushahidi's platform and Dataphyte's Go platform is that sorry, I think Jake wants to talk. We can let him do that after my comment. Okay. Okay. I guess we can allow him. He's talking about his site, and that's one of the things we're talking about, minding people with disability, in also our own inclusion, as media or even data organizations. But I'm going to return back to the point I was making about how geospatial data, something that Ushahidi and Dataphyte Go Local is paying attention to, how it can be useful in even securing or ensuring that you have a safe, fair, and safe and secured election. If you already know by location where are the hot spots for violence, hot spot for vote snatching. We saw the drama that happened in River State, for instance. But if you also then look at all the countries that are having election, if you look at the chart we have, you have Ethiopia, you have Mali, you have Chad, you have Burkina Faso. These are countries that are already, have tension, in the country, either conflict or, coup or some of those things. It means that conflict data or geolocation data become an important data to pay attention to. How will election hold in another 5 months in Ethiopia when the entire Tigray, region is under duress? As a matter of fact, it's like they are clamped by the Eritrea and also the the Ethiopian National Defense Force, and their alleged report. And those are the important things that would definitely shape how election will turn out, in a country like that. The same thing with, Burkina Faso, Mali. These are countries that have their own level of, challenges. I mean, and Nigeria will even have its own local elections, and some of these places are already known for violence. So it's important to pick on some of these things, not to leave behind the issues that we started with, which is how do we ensure that women data, disabled people data, diaspora data, young people data, even privacy of voters. I mean, I tell you, people were talking about buying Bosu's data for 100 naira. The entire 2019, 2015 data of the election, voters' data, I've had nothing less than 5 or 10 people reaching out to me to sell it to me because of the phone number. Imagine having 15 million phone numbers, and I mean, this is people that will send samples of what they have, and we tested it. One of my our colleague who is in and out of Dataphyte at the moment will bear witness to this. So you have important issue aside from using data to drive decision, to even protecting or safeguarding voters' data to ensure that our data don't fall into the wrong hand or become something that is weaponized, especially in the age of deep fake and AI, to give us more problem. I think I should stop here because I see we're almost ending, and Jake we
Yes.
should really give Jake,
Thank
an opportunity.
you, Joshua. Can we give Jake the mic to quickly ask his question? Admin, can you help me unmute him, if we can?
Well, I am unmuted, but you have stopped my video. Okay, but not a problem. I can go ahead. Joshua, I want to really thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for bringing me back. I want to really thank you for what you're doing in your organization and all the people who have spoken. And like I said, I want to emphasize the inclusivity. We can't preach inclusivity, and we're practicing exclusivity. Please, next time and I'm not being critical, please, I'm just appealing to you. Next time when you have events like this, at our own expense, we'll provide sign language interpreter. That's the kind of sacrifice we're willing to make. And normally when we do that, we pay them, That's one. Number two, a program like this, Joshua, which is very heartwarming, and I really appreciate you. There's a need to incorporate persons with disability. Please don't think that I'm trying to look for an opportunity. I would actually prefer if you give younger one the opportunity. You understand? And so there's a need for that to happen. In the disability community, there are things we're doing around data that will really warm your heart when you hear them, And data, I call data as the next oil of the wall, And so, without wasting time, I will give you a few tips. One, I really want to see how we can partner together. And Joshua, if you can make this meeting happen even this week with your team and our team, and also our sister from, I think, Kenya or thereabout, including how we can take advantage of the network, the vast network that is available across the continent. The spokesperson to the Kenyan president is a mentee, Isaac Maura. I'll be more than happy to give you access to him, and that's the kind of thing we can do through collaboration, and several other places. But I have two quick observations because the wonderful moderator, we do have an app that I will want anyone to go and download. And I'm using this opportunity to call for partnership. How can we make it better? How can you bring your wonderful ideas and we'll make it better? And of course, we will give you all the accreditation, all the brand recognition that you want. We have an app called TAF Election Observer.
Jake, sorry to interrupt. Jake, I'll give you 1 minute quickly to do this, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I'm using this opportunity, my dear, to call for partnership. It's not like I'm trying to sell what I have. I want to partner with Dataphyte. I want to partner with any other organization. The 30 seconds left. The other thing is electionhub.org.ng. Election, if somebody can help me type it, electionhub.org.ng. Joshua, what we've done is that we've created a dashboard that gives disaggregated information on persons with disability who have registered with INEC to participate in the election. And that information goes to even the ward. For instance, I went to INEC chairman and I was able to go to his ward and tell him how many persons with disability are there, what kind of disability do they have. On our platform, you can monitor election from anywhere in the world, real-time video, real-time text, real-time data, but I'm saying that we are not proficient. How can we work with code, my friend? Sir Hamza? How can we work with my sister? How can we work with Dataphyte, and make it more holistic and more professional? This is my appeal. Please, whatever you do, think of inclusion. Think of inclusion. You never know how many people are watching. If you have a sign language interpreter, it will enhance what we're doing. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry if I ran over my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake. I'm sure that the Dataphyte team in the background have taken note, and we definitely would love to take this conversation forward and work with. Like we said, this is all about inclusivity, and we are not planning on exclude anyone in this process. So yes, we will definitely carry this conversation forward. We have less than 7 minutes to finish up and round up. I'm going to thank everyone for their time on this webinar. It's been a very, like you attest, it's been a very fruitful and engaging one. But before we go, I'm going to give the panelists one minute to just give like final thoughts. My notes is full. I've put down a lot of things. We've talked about the missing voices of women and how we should encourage them to take more. To give them more opportunities to, participate in the election. We've had the part around trust in the process. Elections are good, but the processes are flawed, and so we need to, review the processes, and efforts are being done, especially from collaborations with Ushahidi and this whole team, putting efforts together to see how that process, works well, especially with. And it works well with collaborating with government agencies around elections in Africa. We've also seen how data is playing out, how we need to use post-election data that has been collected to push the agenda, to push for reforms and push for better policy changes, and help with better decision making. Technology is not hiding in all of this equation. Everything is evolving by the day. We heard Rhoda talk about how they are introducing some new AI components. We also know that Dataphyte has several AI powered projects that they are also launching, or that is already in use in the media and in other space. So technology is also playing out in the elections and how it is evolving in Africa. And so we would like to give the panelists, I would like to give them 1 minute. I'll start with Joshua. Quickly do 1 minute, just final thoughts on what we have talked about, and then we'll round up. I'll go with Joshua first, and then to Mukhtar, and Rhoda will give the final note. Joshua, please.
Right. I guess first is to use the opportunity to thank the panelists, also our moderator, and everyone who's joined. I guess that's the first thing. The second thing would be that we all give attention or pay attention to the power that data will bring to the conversation, and how do we repurpose that for insight? How do we repurpose that for advocacy? How do we repurpose that for accountability? The other thing that will follow that is not leaving behind the power of the people. How do we use the crowdsourcing, the human agency of citizens, to do literacy, to do accountability, to also, do monitoring of the election, especially to ensure the integrity. If you participate in securing your election, then the trust outcomes would be easier. So how do we engage the 200 million plus people that will be going to the poll, to elect their leaders? How do we ensure that they do beyond just ballot, putting their stamp on the ballot, but also ensuring that they understand who they are voting for, and they stay behind to ensure that that goes on. The other important thing is all the demographic dynamics, and also let me call it geospatial dynamics to the election that we need to pay attention to, which speaks to the gender, the disability, the young people, even the aging and aged population, because they will also want to vote, and you should allow them to vote, And then lastly, how do we ensure that geospatial data and insight from it is helping both in the process and the and administration of the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mukhtar, please.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say thank you to Joshua and the team, as well as, I've always been a fan of Dataphyte. It's just for me to move into Dataphyte office now. And also Ushahidi, it's always a thing for me. And just to say, Joshua and the team, Femi, please, when you're putting the letter or email for the partnership with TAF, I'm very happy to join the meeting, even if it is this week. I'm very happy to start up the conversation with you. And just to say, election and then election process is not for just government, civil society. It is for each and every one of us. How can we partner? How can we collaborate and make our election better, so that we cannot always sit down and say we have the best and we send the worst? Let's send the best for a time. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mukhtar. Rhoda, final thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the fellow panelists and to Rosemary. Thank you. I'll summarize it by emphasizing what Mukhtar said about trust, that one, we need to ensure that people who are rarely, by building trust, we're ensuring that people who are rarely heard by decision makers are able to share their data in ways that allows them to get help and the outcomes that they want. Two, emphasizing what Joshua said, is that decision makers have data and insights to better help support the communities that they are serving. And in this way, then, as a result of that, then the data that the communities have generated, then they grow into public goods that serve the overall community as a resource to improve society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much to all the panelists for your contribution. It's been a very fruitful and robust conversation, and I must really, really thank you for your time and for the knowledge that you have impacted. And thank you to the audience. I apologize if I missed any of your question, or if we missed any of your question and we didn't come to it. Please forgive us. So this webinar is a series. We will let you know when the next webinar will be happening. So keep that in mind, and look out for that email that tells you when next we will have this conversation. Again, thank you to all the panelists, Rhoda, Mukhtar, Joshua. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks again for the insight. Femi, if you're here, do you want to say final words before we run?
A big thank you to everyone. Panelists, just like Rosemary said, Rhoda, Mukhtar, Joshua, thank you so much for your insight. We're also truly grateful for the contributors who joined in. People like Mr. J.K. Pele, your insight is always invaluable to our community, as we always look forward to building up from there. We also appreciate, of course, the likes of many other people. And let me just take our time to mention that one of our AI-driven products is GoLocal. GoLocal gives us the opportunity to even do more when it comes to elections as we have it. It's a fantastic platform that helps with geospatial planning, data gathering, and the likes of that. And we look forward to even doing a lot of things alongside with the Ushahidi code and provide more social details and socioeconomic driven insights along the lines of Africa. It's time that we will continue to forge with data-driven decisions that help map what Africa is really like, and not just be based on scopes and theories, but to be able to see what truly happens on the continent. And that's why we have the platform like golocal.io is due for release later this year. We'll be excited to share information about this with you, and similar with all our products as well. In the meantime, I encourage everyone who is joining on the webinar, like Rosemary said, keep a date with us next month. It's a series. We look forward to engaging on another major conversation along the lines of the African continent, and sometimes even Nigeria, as the case may be. In the meantime, you can read all our publications as we release them, sometimes 4 times a week, on dataphyte.com. You find quite a number of our work provided through the Insight platform. So feel free to get Data Dive, Senorita, M&M, as we often call it, and the other platforms and products that we release via that. Thank you once again for joining in. Grateful to everyone who joined in, and look out for that email or that invite that gets you into the conversation that truly matters in days to come. Thank you.